Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video, I'd like to discuss PMQs as usual, as both Keir Starmer and Stephen Flynn tackle Sunak over the economy, predictably enough, as the economy is currently on fire, and Rishi Sunak has been caught red-handed with a box of matches. But also, as a result of one of the questions, Sunak may have given one of the worst responses you could possibly give to a question at PMQs. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel. So I'm going to be discussing the economic news twice today, really, because it's fairly momentous. But the background here is that comparable economies not only have lower inflation, but their inflation is falling. Our CPI inflation has remained the same. Core inflation is actually going up. The government are actively egging the Bank of England on to shrink the economy, and national debt is now above 100% of GDP for the first time in about 60 years. And as if all that weren't bad enough, the government do not even seem to be hinting that they may need to rethink things. They are just looking for someone to blame. Now, before I get to Starmer, I'm going to bring up the first backbench question again because it's very relevant. Patricia Gibson of the SNP asked, how much living standards have fallen since Sunak has been in office? Now, it's the question that's important here, not the answer. There wasn't an answer. This was Rishi Sunak. But it's important for politicians to remember that when they talk about the economy, what the public hear is standard of living. Now, if you try to say that the economy is doing well, they expect their standard of living to be doing well. No amount of skullduggery with spreadsheets is going to cut any ice with voters if they feel that their standard of living is below where it should be. Nobody really cares if the economy is growing or shrinking, if national debt is rising or falling. They care about what standard of living the money in their pocket can give them. Then, after both Sunak and Starmer paid tribute to the Windrush generation, a bit rich from Sunak really when his government is still hounding them and failing to pay compensation for earlier misdeeds, and Starmer paid tribute to Glenda Jackson, the Labour leader asked if Sunak agrees that Britain is facing a mortgage catastrophe. At which point Sunak said that the government needs to help people with mortgages. But what the government is actually doing is increasing mortgage payments. How is that helping them? He linked the moves with inflation, but we've been raising interest rates for over a year now, and inflation just kept going up. People talk about interest rates being high elsewhere, but their inflation is going down. Not that I'm saying those central banks necessarily should have been raising interest rates like they did or not. Not my place to say, but their inflation is at least falling. Ours is not. Starmer then pointed out that Sunak said regarding the Johnson report vote that he doesn't want to influence people. He said Sunak's still doing this. How much is this Tory economic failure going to cost householders, he asked. Again, no answer from Sunak. Just parroting his line about getting on with the job. We're getting on with the job, we're delivering, we're getting on with the job, we're delivering. I joked before, maybe we should just have a parrot as a Prime Minister. At this point, you just think, it would actually be cheaper. And, I was saying before PMQs as well, Sunak is so bad at politics, he doesn't even know when he's dying on his arse. His private school education taught him to just stand up, cheerfully talk a load of old tripe with confidence, and that will do the trick. And sometimes it works. It is very much how the con artist operates, but it is not working here. So Starmer answered his question for him and said it's an extra £2,900 on people's mortgage payments a year. That's the average. Think about all those swing voters in the Tory heartlands where house prices tend to be higher. How much is it costing Sunak's key voters? Sunak tried to compare interest rates in other countries as being comparable, but it is a deflection. Not only are those other countries seeing falling inflation, as I say, which of course means they've got more money to pay the higher mortgage payments, but the actual interest rate is not as important as the debt to income ratio. If mortgages are much higher compared to incomes in the UK, then the interest rate translates into a much bigger problem for a country where mortgages, than for countries where mortgages are relatively smaller. So I did a quick example. Sunak cited the USA, so a little bit of a look up, a little bit of maths, and I see that the ratio of house price to income in the USA seems to be about 6.4. In the UK, it's 8.6. Higher debt means the same interest rate is less affordable. Sunak then tried to slate Labour's policies on blocking new North Sea oil and gas licences. The problem is this is a popular policy. In fact, I saw a poll this week which showed that it was riotously popular amongst Labour voters. But although not as popular amongst Conservative voters, still more popular than not. So it's still got net popularity amongst Conservative voters. Sunak is getting on the right side of some of his MPs on this one, but not his voters. And if more Conservative voters are in favour than not, you can bet your arse the proportion is even higher amongst those crucial swing voters. Because whatever policy is popular amongst Labour voters, and maybe not so much against Conservative voters, the more you moved towards that sort of middle position where the swing voters are, the more it is likely to favour the Labour position. Sunak really was given a masterclass here in how to mess up populist rhetoric. But after Sunak reeled off a list of other countries with higher interest rates, Starmer said that the Prime Minister might have a keen interest in the mortgage market in California, but he's talking about mortgage rates here. He said he'd spoken to someone who is having to sell up and downsize because their mortgage is going up by £5,000 a year, nearly £5,000 a year. And then Sunak gave what I think might be one of the worst answers I've ever heard in a PMQs to a leader of the opposition. And bear in mind, Boris Johnson gave some answers that were so bad, it eventually precipitated his resigning from Parliament altogether. So reminder, Starmer has just relayed the story of a voter in Selby. Now, this is where the crucial by-election is to be held next month. There's 3 by-elections. This one's really key. Real big battle between Labour and the Conservatives. So this voter in Selby, faced with an unaffordable increase of £400 a month extra on their mortgage payments, is having to sell up and get a smaller property and tell his children to share a bedroom. Okay? Starmer asks why this person should pay the price for Sunak's failure. Sunak fires back with, well, I hope you told him your policies would make the situation even worse. Holy crap. I mean, I know I keep saying that Sunak is really bad at policy, but holy crap. This might be the worst retort ever. You imagine, not just that you are this particular voter, like, as a result of government policy, you've got to sell you haven't lost your job or anything. You haven't lost you still got the job. But somehow, and you could afford the mortgage payments, somehow, because of what this government's doing, you're now having to sell your home where everyone was happy, kids had their own room, go to a smaller place, right? So your standard of living is going to go down, okay? And the Prime Minister shows no concern. This is not really a billionaire technically, but he's nearer a billionaire than a millionaire. So this incredibly wealthy man tells you, well, you think it's bad under us, you should try under Labour. Oh my goodness me. And imagine what other voters will think. Other voters in Selby will be looking at this. Their fixed term rate's coming to an end. They're worrying. They see the Prime Minister dismiss completely their issues. This is terrible. I mean, the general Tory response of, well, you think things are bad under us, you should try Labour. I mean, that is bad enough. But what a tone-deaf response to give. And about a town where there is to be a crucial by-election next month, which Sunak desperately needs to win. At this point, I almost don't think there's any need to go on. I don't think Sunak thinks there's any need to go on. He must think he's done now. You know, Starmer asked about the increasing numbers of repossessions against a background of 7.5 million people coming to the end of fixed rate terms over the next 2 years. No answer. Starmer said that things might look fine from the vantage point of Sunak's helicopter, but via the honours list, he's rewarding those guilty of economic vandalism. Interesting one, actually. I think that's more for later. See, Johnson's rewarding those guilty of failing during a pandemic. The ones being rewarded for economic vandalism will be in Liz Truss's list. Maybe Starmer's warming up for that. Sunak just complained that Starmer was being mean to him and again insisted that he was delivering. And I just got to thinking, so you know how Putin was kept in the dark about not only Russia's capacity to invade Ukraine in the first place, but about the progress once the full-scale invasion was launched? Because nobody dared give him the news that actually it was all going to hell. I wonder if the same's happening with Sunak. Do you think he goes back later and they have the debrief and also, oh, it went terribly well. Did it really? I didn't really hear much support from my own benches. Oh, no, it was marvellous. Probably the acoustics in there. Has he surrounded himself with stooges who tell him what he wants to hear? And he actually has no idea what's going on. So that every time some data comes out, as it has today, he's actually genuinely confused. Because I thought you said everything was going swimmingly. Oh, yeah, I don't understand it, Prime Minister. You're so great and everything. Or does he know? Does he know well enough that he's toast? When he goes for the debrief this afternoon, will his advisors be sat around him and he'll go, oh, how did that go then? And they'll just look at each other and go, it's terrible. You're losing the next election, Prime Minister. Does he know? Does he know that he's toast? And he's just brazening it out to steal as much money as he can before buggering off to America. But then on to the SNP. Stephen Flynn quoted Sunak on a few things about him improving the economy and suggested he was taking honesty lessons from Boris Johnson, at which point the Speaker reminded him that this is the current Prime Minister. See, MPs are now allowed to call Boris Johnson a liar, and they are most definitely filling their boots. But that is largely because he's no longer an MP. But you're supposed to be more wary about calling existing MPs liars. Yes, even when you think they are. You see, sometimes it's possible that they aren't actually lying, even if it seems like it's obvious they are. Sometimes they are just terminally thick. Flynn then came out with some international comparisons of his own. He said that Ireland and the Eurozone had better inflation records. He asked Sunak to admit that Brexit has broken the economy. Sunak just repeated his assertion that inflation and interest rates are global. It's a shame Flynn didn't lead with that question, really, because then he could have come back by noting that inflation is falling around the globe and interest rates are set by individual central banks. Still, you could argue it doesn't matter. The economic news today is so genuinely dire that is it for the Tories now. Seriously, that's it. No way back. And it's not even like they're willing to try anything different anyway. Doing the same thing and expecting different results and all that. That's what the Tories are. Mad. But like I say, there'll be another one later tonight on how the news today links in with his pledges and how that's basically that for the Tories now. As long as Labour stay focused, they still can't be complacent, of course not. But as long as they stay focused, it's in the bag now. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.